What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? Thanks for coming here tonight. Tonight is a really awesome, uh, a stream that we wouldn't normally actually do. And it's gonna be it's gonna be about teams, and it's gonna be about the dynamics in that of which. And I got excited about this topic a little while ago. Dan, who's joining me tonight to help talk with that, was also excited about this. And we thought it'd be a cool idea to maybe come together and kind of talk about our experiences and our kind of the things we've kind of gone through with teams, and maybe that would be something that people might extrapolate for their own teams for, or maybe you just want to hear cool stories. Who knows? So that's what brought us here tonight, and I want to thank LFE for letting us do that and seeing how this talk goes and see kind of where the discussion goes, because there's a lot of excitement and a lot of energy that goes into team making, and I'm feeling that right now, especially from last week when we had when LFE had Alan on talking about fealty. My team, I'm going to be honest, has been blowing up all week about all the different things their characters are going to do, and that's super, super energizing. And so
that's really fun.
Yeah.
Wait, so what kind of team are you making?
I wouldn't exactly put it as is it going to fit into a shoehorn like that? I don't know. So I think we all kind of have our own interplay with our characters. So I guess our team is is more of probably a faction kind of thing, and that really matters a lot with fealty as well. Like it's inherent in their rules that a lot of and Alan was kind of alluded a little bit to that there would be things that would go specifically to factions. But like a faction isn't necessarily defined probably by a race or anything like that. Generally speaking, of all of the LARPs, I think. So like we have the luxury of having that diversity in our ensemble of characters. Everyone's different races, different backgrounds. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing entirely, other than like, hey, so I'm gonna be friends with that character because my teammate and I, who are all friends out of game, wanted to do that way, and that's brought to some cool discussion. And other people have been going through that too. And that's an exciting time to have, and it's new for me. I wonder if you've yourself, if you've ever had that happen to you when you're on teams yourself.
Oh, like the buzz surrounding creating a new team. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, I wonder, do you? Is there anything specific? So there's a team that was at another LARP I played once at, and they had like this game where they would throw a disc around, and it was basically frisbee, but it was their own kind of thing. Have you ever like done anything like that with characters that you are on a team with? Like, hey, you guys have like a separate activity that you guys like kind of script out maybe, or even just go to when certain things give you the time to do so?
Yeah, I had this idea about teams that like a good LARP team, which is just like the crew of people that you hang out with at the LARP, like that, you have like a dynamic with them that makes it kind of as fun as the other stuff in the game. I kind of view like a team as like ideally like it's its own little like LARP. I think it's like really fun to be a part of a group that has its own plot, and it has its own dynamics, and it has its own story, and excitement and internal goals and objectives and stuff like that. And if nothing else happens at the game, at least you have this like great experience with your friends.
Yeah.
So I've been on a couple teams that are kind of like all about like maximizing that, like how do what are we bringing to the LARP for each other kind of things. That my favorite was probably House Beacon from Madrigal 2, where we played like a mercenary company, and we really got into like the mercenary role, and we wanted to be like kind of militaristic. So we had all these kind of mercenary house traditions. Like we had like a really elaborate initiation ritual, and we had a way of kind of ranking up within the team, and then we did like marching drills and like like team combat maneuvers where we wanted to approach combat like as a group, and figure out ways to kind of support each other in combat. And largely that's a game of learning how to position with each other.
That's a game in itself, absolutely.
Yeah, and so we spent a lot of time just like kind of like practicing like maneuvers and like working out like signals for each other of like, I'm going to do this, so that's going to give you an opening, like kind of like quick little like language around that.
That's excellent.
It was just really fun. Also just having like a dynamic on the team of like we're a mercenary company, so people have different like jobs within the group, and there's this, we have group goals, like some of which are external and some of which are internal. It's really fun, super memorable.
Speaking of goals, I think that's kind of so like when in my experience so far with this team I'm on for Fealty and other teams I've been on for other LARPs, I mean like I always start off at some different point, right? So there's never like, okay, I will always start here when I'm going to create a character for a faction or something, right? I don't think I can absolutely at all do that. I always start in the middle, right? And sometimes the middle means also goals, but when you think about the middle, once that kind of comes to life a little, suddenly you kind of know, oh, this would be a fun goal to explore, right? That's kind of my personal like poke when it comes to when I'm trying to forge something, and then now adding other people to that, right? And collectively moving towards now a goal. And so bringing up goals like that, it's there's your team goals could be like resultant of a micro story between you and one other character. Maybe someone's got something about their class or something they don't want to tell anybody. Maybe it has to be kept a secret.
Right.
And like now you're in that secret too. That has its own dynamics, right? That's governed by no one else but those two people. So the whole world's happening around you, and that stuff happening right there. And you have two like-minded individuals who know that that's the kind of gameplay that's happening, and the experience, the LARP experience that's happening. So goals is one thing, right? What about so team goals? In my experience, have always been largely, not that I wouldn't want to explore otherwise, but a lot of my team goals come resultant from what a staff might put in front of me as something like, yo, all of us can become part of this order or something. Would you qualify that as like a whole team goal? What else would you consider a huge team goal that connects everyone together without it breaking down into the micro stories that are also exciting? But what experience might you have there in a big team goal like that?
Goals, there's like a lot that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Are you talking about team plot or like? Well, so there's like the game that's running, and your group like can come up with like their own objectives within that. We want to be important within town, or we want to set up some kind of structure that other people can play with or whatever.
No, I think another way to put it might be so you have your team goals, right? What kind of things might dictate the team goals? Like some things that have dictated mine have been resulted from gameplay, and that changes the team dynamic. Doesn't like it's not like the team dynamic is static and never is affected by the game. I mean, what kind of things would you could the game allow into those kinds of things? So like suddenly, what if a common contact dies or something? How does that, does it have drama? Do you think you can achieve that at the LARPs you've played?
Yeah, I part of it is going to be based on your team's concept. Like if your team has a really strong idea of what it is in this world, like we're a guild, or we're all thieves, or we're all elves, or something like that. Like that's going to give a lot of structure to your gameplay too.
Okay.
And then I think there's also like you said, like the like inner team dynamics that can be like kind of one of the things that you're playing. We had I played a game called Mutvia where I was on a very small team. There were only like 4 people on it, and we had a really cool inner dynamic that was really fun to play. And that we had 3 of the people on the team are the nobles, and like there's and then I'm like the commoner, like manservant that has to like kind of like butler around and do the mundane, like set the table, open the door for them kind of stuff. But it was a really fun game. But like within them, they have within the nobles, like there's one that's kind of like we used to have a team leader who mysteriously died, and now everybody else is kind of jockeying for position within our house. And so there's the person who like probably should be the heir, and then there's the person who's kind of appointed to be in charge, and then there's the daughter who's not doesn't want power herself, but wants to be the one choosing and stuff like that. And then the daughter, who's my girlfriend Brett, is having a secret affair with the commoner manservant, So there's also this kind of like, if other people on the team find out about that, it's like a secret that they can kind of like use against her, and
Yep.
so we're like trying to conceal our illicit affair, whilst the other stuff in the game is going on, which is, usually very corny, but
That's
it
kind
was
of still.
but it's fun, like, again, like we don't, we have goals as a team that, we're trying to play this game of jockeying for position with other noble houses, and trying to get our influence on what's going on in, like, within the town. But we also have entire days where we didn't really play with like the plot
Right.
that much, and we just kind of had our internal house drama, and it was actually really rewarding and fun, because
awesome. So
it was
that's
validated by people outside of it.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of sounds like a really rewarding experience. So, do you think sometimes people when because a lot of team dynamics requires a lot of communication, and that can be intimidating to some, I think.
Yeah.
But when you do get there, let's say, do you think they're how would you try to get into that mode of like trying to like think that way? I've heard some games do workshops and things like that.
Right.
So you were part of team dynamics. We were talking earlier about like combat play and stuff like that. But I think a workshop sounds like might be a little like, if you were to include more than just one.
And in this case, like a workshop is like really like a formal process that like the game will run, and it kind of gets people, gives people the tools they need to play the game properly, whether that's teaching them the rules,
and those tools would be enhancing like team play. Right.
And in some places the big pregame workshop is like letting people, giving people a space where they can build like stories with each other and relationships and stuff like that. In terms of our team, our pregame workshop was mostly about how to, like, that game's pregame workshop was mostly about like playing in the setting and how the setting works and how people behave in this, the caste system and stuff like that you kind of needed to understand in order to get how people role play at the game. But within our team, it started with a discussion about like, well, what do you guys want to play and how do you want to play with each other?
Yeah.
Like we didn't want to default to just like, we're all friends out a game. So we didn't want it to just become like us hanging out like we're normal friends.
Right, because you do that
with funny
enough,
names.
Right?
Like we wanted it to have a little bit more like meat and role play to it.
Yeah.
So we figured out kind of ways that we could, like, what are some things that we could do that would like let us screw each other over, and what would be a fun little like game we can be playing against each other, amidst the game. Which also a lot of which has to do with discussing boundaries and like, like no matter what, and being you want to put on a good face for the public quickly, or like when we have like an argument, like we should have it in front of somebody that's not on the team so it can become gossip and people can figure out how to manipulate us and stuff like that, and make the dynamic a little bit more shared.
Right. So you inherently have like you inherently had something that you're placing in the character, like the thing that can be manipulated, right?
Yeah, and that's part of like good like character versus character play in general, is like trying to come up with ways that your character is vulnerable,
right?
And it's actually really fun when you put those out there and somebody uses them.
You say that. So this field, the team I'm on for Fealty, like I'm super excited for, because there's everyone's communicating and everyone is talking about what's happening, right, and what they're thinking and why their characters are the things they are and what activities they're going to be generally doing, and all these activities sound like they have absolutely nothing to do with any story that comes at us, right? And that's remarkable, and it stinks because, like I was saying before earlier with communication, how super important that is. It's tough now because we're all communicating digitally, right? And we're trying to organize that too, and that has its advantages, right? But I think there's a lot to be said about that in-person workshop-y feel, right? Where everyone's, I even thought like a formal workshop, that in-person, like, okay, so like, you can see how something might affect somebody. You think that would I think that's something that, would you agree?
I mean, like a lot of LARPing, like there's a different quality to it when it's in person. It's one of the reasons we like live action games, is because like doing stuff with your body is like cool. It feels good. As far as workshop, something you can do kind of between my Drakenfest team did this, the Morning Star. It's a huge team with like 60 people on it right now.
Oh, my team is like half the game right now. Half the it's
yeah,
yeah, we're huge.
And my Drakenfest team has people from like a dozen different countries.
All languages
and
different.
so there's like this real challenge to like try to get all these people from very different backgrounds to like play together. And we had a really successful like thread in our group, or like a Facebook group that was just like, come find me for blank, and you just posted like a picture of your character, and it was like, come find me for like what do you want to do at the game? For me it was like paladin stuff and fights, and like if you want to talk about religion, come talk to me.
That sounds so simple, but is next level.
Right. And people, people's answers to it really vary. Like sometimes their answers are like, come find me if you need a friend, and it's very or come find me if you want to do this very specific thing that I want to do, and just lets people know like what hooks are in your team that are things you can do during the weekend, or the week in Drakenfest case.
Here's something. Want to go a flashback real quick? Want to maybe go back into the memory a little bit? So
way back.
All right. So you gotta come with me on this. All right. So me, 12 years ago, first LARP. We'll go 11 years ago. I had like 3 events of LARPing in me. All right. Okay. And then suddenly, I'm at this game, and LARPing was a new experience for me. I didn't know a lot of people. I had one person that came with me that kind of faded out after 2 or 3 events, which, to each their own. That person ended up continuing to NPC in different ways, and just ultimately being that they just didn't like the PC. But regardless, getting scoped out by like complete strangers, right? Effectively, it's like, so, the game is being played a certain way. Your understanding about how the game is a certain way. People, you don't know them, they don't know you. Now suddenly they invite you into this like procession of people that you've never met, and new friendships came out of that. So, in that experience, of the new player, right? So, team, people I don't know, intimidating, whoa, but that kind of how it worked out for me was I kind of just had to take the leap. How did it work out for you? Because I know everyone's got experience like this. If you don't, then it's, I guess I'm just.
When I met you?
Yeah, I guess when you met
at that game. Yeah. You don't want me to tell this story, do you?
No. It's well, yeah, we can say. I mean, it was Nero. I mean, it was Avondale, like 2008, or 9, whatever, Karoth or something. And that's where I met. I mean, largely the people that
all right, audience. So here's what happens. So we're NPCing at this game, and we're like, Matt, this new kid Matt, like he seems cool. Let's make friends with him and include him in our reindeer.
Well,
games.
I don't mean. So okay. So let me segue that real quick. That's one kind. There's that, but I'm not talking that particular moment. I mean, like this when it was seriously done, right? Like in the context of the game. Like, so in my experience, it was like I got into a noble court, and that was like, I achieved something, and it felt like I was doing something great. And I wouldn't have gotten there or started to experience story like that unless I had just taken the plunge onto a team. So I want to know. So I'm not so concerned about how it went for you. I just want to know what yours was, because you were doing this before I was.
When I took the plunge and joined a team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Nero Neridia.
Whoa.
Like 2000 or something like that.
Did you know the people outside of it? Like, did you meet them? Were they strangers to you?
No, it was other people that played Avondale and decided to put together an all elf team, and I think I was the lone human on it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, also like kind of a fun dynamic and very lore and role play heavy. The important thing was like finding the people at the LARP who like to play like you do and surrounding yourself with them. Yeah.
Because also sometimes too people get out because they can't, and that has nothing to do with the quality of the game. It's just they can't find that that group of people that want to play the way they want to.
Right.
And some people don't want to be forced to play a certain way either, and that's its own. I'm sure that's its own bag of cats.
Right. I often tell the story. I when I started LARPing, I came with this group of like 20 over caffeinated teenagers. Like we all joined a group.
See, I didn't start.
Everybody had different goals. Everybody was all over the place.
My first event was 18. I was late to it. A lot of people I knew started like 13 or 14, but were like lying about their age or something. Or whatever it might have been. All kinds of games. Like there was all kinds of rules back then for different things. Hey, Silway, the Journeyman, I think it was. Silway says that was the team, the Journeyman. Oh man, Silway sounds like he's got a story. Hey, so Piano Fetish, sorry I missed you there.
Over caffeinated kids running around at Nero swinging tiny amounts of damage at unbeatable monsters.
Yeah.
It was really fun, but it was too wild. You know, it was like everybody wanted to be something that was very hard to accomplish
Right.
in Nero. Nero was
And
a mess.
was the idea of like cohesive effort collectively to achieve all things was probably like out the window.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And also at the time, the style of like plot for new players was really lame. I feel like as if sometimes in video games and they make you or RPGs like at low level they need to give you almost like this really low stakes and consequential
Yeah.
task. Like in D&D you're fighting like goblins. But like at least those are
Kobold.
still monsters. But
Yeah.
so I don't know. It just felt like you just because they're new players like they have to do this like stupid like just go kill a goblin hag and like that's what you do at low level and like high level players will babysit for you and like make what you're doing seem less dramatic because as soon as you die they're just going to heal you. I don't know, it was so whack back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I see. I when I started it was I can't even say I couldn't even address what it was because I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what any of it was. Anything in LARPing. I didn't know anything about games. I didn't know about the brands behind the games. Or I didn't know anything. It's like really hard to think that I didn't know anything back then. I can't because it colored my perspective for so many years, um, and and shaped a lot of the relationships you end up having throughout it. And that was a huge takeaway. And so sometimes it took a long time to be able to go to another LARP because maybe that the people that you only saw at the one you were going to, that was the only one they could go to twice a year. Mm-hmm. And so it became a thing. I was like, I need to see those people. This is the only time I see them. They're in my state. Let's talk about like that's the logistics of like you give you like the macro of it. Like people travel work and have traveled long distances. And that time is sacred, and so okay, sacred's a strong word, but I mean that like romantically in the sense of like that time is like really people are putting serious time into spending time with others,
Yeah.
But that level of dedication you don't always find,
Mm-hmm.
So moving to another LARP and then maybe not finding it and then all being a bust, it makes you feel bad.
I remember when I was younger seeing people play these LARPs who are largely just kind of coming to like kind of hang out with their friends and like grill like sausages and at the time I just like didn't get it. Like why wouldn't you want to just be running around all weekend and staying up till till 3 a.m. and fighting all the time? Like why do you just want to sit on a porch and eat burgers? Now I get it.
Yeah. Still, my God. 2 years ago, okay, so like I never was not combat, and oh, dude, I'm gonna admit it to everyone in my community, like I was the gopher for everything. I mean, like,
right.
Go fight the thing. We're gonna catch up to. I mean, for years, and to a point that was fun, and I love those times. I think fondly of those times, but man, when I got to that mental state of like, oh, I don't have to do that at this different game because the dynamics are just different, because the discussions and the characters are all different. I was like, whoa, the whole world of possibilities opened up. So I think if I were like the no shit there I was kind of moment, it was that moment I realized that was happening, and then was able to make a new community out of that. And the reason I bring that up is because that had a huge deal with integrating in the team culture of the game I was at. And someone in chat asked, what do you do if you are staff and you spot PCs who aren't integrating into team culture and it's getting left behind?
Yeah, it's really tricky because like team logic can dominate a game. It's like sometimes there's LARPs where there's no teams and everybody's just kind of playing a character that's in the setting and they don't like have these little like subgroups that they belong to other than their race or class or whatever. But sometimes like you said like half of the game is your team. It's like it's really scary to not be on that team when you're in that game. And what do you do as staff? I mean, ideally you just want to make sure people play together. Like you want to you also want to make sure that you're like, I think when you're running plot at team, like a lot, like big teams, you end up like kind of pitching stuff at them.
Right.
But like, you just want to make sure that they don't steal your attention, and that it's not like you need to target stuff at like the slimmest minority of players that are out there, like, but like you got to figure out like how they're an important part of the story too,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
and just like watch out for Team Nerdball. Like Team Nerdball is like the worst part of LARP, you know,
What is
like
Team Nerdball?
Team Nerdball. There's this great article by Matt Webb,
Oh,
which you
okay,
should
man.
look
You need,
up.
all right, I think you could post a link. You could post that link if you want.
Yeah, I'll find it somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's this term that Matt came up with for uh like people play LARPs in this kind of like out of game competitive way where they're like, I want to maximize my fun, so I'm gonna like keep the information amongst my friends, and we're gonna, you know, if we get a hook, like we're gonna take it and keep it to ourselves. And it kind of like puts like the out of game like click dynamics into the foreground
Oh,
of the
God, the
game,
worst.
and people
Yeah.
play in this way that they, you know, they need to make themselves indispensable, and
Right.
they don't necessarily care if other people like kind of get blocked out by this experience, because you know it's actually like a form of playing, you know, very selfishly, to be playing like super effectively and competitively in a game where other people can't access the same
If
stuff
the
you
game,
do.
yeah, the game, a lot of the games I had the most fun at usually, the gameplay is in such a way where there's there are like in designed mitigations to like stop that, but at the same time
Yeah,
it takes people realizing like, no, I don't want to play that way, right, and then not.
I showed up at some random Nero chapter once, and it was like there's like this noble team of like 15 people, and then there's like maybe like 30 other people in the game. So like the noble team is like a third of the game,
Yeah.
and they were all like veteran 10+ year Nero players that knew how the game worked.
Right,
They
right.
understand that when an NPC comes out, he's either got like a rumor or a hook, and there's like
Right.
a
So they
little
have,
bit of
yeah, they have some base
there's like a
fundamental
little bit
knowledge.
of a
Yeah.
game you can play conversationally to get that info really quickly and efficiently.
Mm.
And if you know, and there are certain words that if you say, plot reacts to that, like, you know, and to turn on the emotion in the right place, and they go like, oh, this guy cares, and I'm going to make sure he's in the front line, you know, of the next encounter and whatever. And you know, and the plot team at this game was like really trying to like distribute the plot, but like these guys were just jumping on it, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And I watched, like, you know, they had a kind of phase of the day that was the hooks, and then the phase of the day that was the modules. And the modules, like this one team just went on module after module after module back to back, and it was like, you guys suck. Like, you were like absolutely did not share the fun. Like, I drove like for hours to get
Right.
here, and like
That's what I
didn't
was
get to
saying
do
earlier. I was like,
anything.
when people put that time into it and then like they get hit
Yeah.
with that when you get there, that stinks. You know, that's just like bust.
Yeah.
And it happens. You know, and sometimes it happens. It's sad when it happens. I was gonna say it's inevitable, but honestly, it's not inevitable because it can be avoided. You know,
Right.
it's not like a fate doomed to all. Right.
Right.
But
It's just something you gotta like be sensitive about, you know.
Yeah.
Like the Team Nerdball, like it's really easy to like just step in front of people and, you know, grab the hook and yeah.
Oh man! Earlier you said something, and I wish I had jotted it down real quick because now because it was a live thought. I didn't write it down though. I've forgotten it. But it has to do with with the Team Nerdball thing for a second. Like, you know, big team, right? Let's go with that for a second. Like this big team. I you know, when I was talking about my team on Fealty earlier, like there was a real value I saw in the conscious decision made where it's okay for everyone to have their own individual like thing about it. You know what I mean? So that when we integrate, like our gameplay style is to come together at points and then go back out. Come together at points and go back out. You know, instead of just like moving as one huge unit and dominating physical space first and foremost, right? If you are the most people in the room and people don't want to be in that room, people are gonna talk to you instead. And it gets cramped in some campsites, man. And you don't want to be like up next to somebody who's been combating for 4 hours. It's not a good time, right?
Right.
And in furs in the summer. But so physical space aside, so that branching out enables the micro stories to happen, right, between the characters that are doing the branching out. You know, and then there are people who maybe just want to be solo, right, and have only a couple of notes that. And maybe the thing for them is they, that bar trip before the game, you know, or that restaurant trip before the game where everyone's like not in character or anything like that. It's a cool moment to have with everybody, and a LARP brings that together, right?
Can I tell a crazy team story?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the craziest team that I think I've ever LARPed with, and we're gonna jump in the way back to I want to say 2007 or
Ooh.
8, which is when the first time I went to Conquest Mythodia, this huge German festival.
Oh, I'm hearing it.
Uh, and so we at the time I was working for Nero, and me and Noah Mason and Joe Valenti were trying to put together an American version of Conquest. And so we had made these contacts with the people that ran Conquest. They flew us over to Germany to see what the game was about, and they just kind of put us with this team. There's like, these guys are tip top role players, you'll love them. Camp, they're called the Ordo Solus. They're like crazy paladins. That's the only knowledge we had. And and we find ourselves camping
Crazy
with this
paladins, got
group.
it.
Yeah, so we find ourselves camping with this group called the Ordo Solus, the Order of the Sun. They are, I'd say, 75% of the people on the team were from Sicily, and they were some of the most intense role players I've ever met. Like they,
Really?
after, I mean,
Like straight up
for one, I
actors?
just remember the
Straight up
tournament. We're
actors?
like, well, they were into it, like they really had the
All right, all right.
believe, like they were
All right,
there.
all right,
you
yeah.
know I remember like one of the first bites of the game was talking of their leader, and he's, we're like drinking beer, and I think I'm drinking a beer out of a bottle, and he's like, wait, no, and he hands me this like in-game cup, and he's like, 360 days of the year you can drink out of the bottle, but here we get to do this. It's like, oh, lovely. Like you're so into it. You're so into it. But anyway, so the Ordo Solus was this team that like it's like basically like its own LARP in Sicily at the time. Like it had I want to say 75 people in the order, and they their belief system, this paladin belief system, is kind of based on Kabbalah. Like they have this in-game version of Kabbalah, but they all like, part of the paladin training is like learning to write in Hebrew, and they like their
Did
religious
you say
documents are all
Kabbalah?
in, yeah, Kabbalah,
What
like
is that?
like Jewish numerology.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, an ancient mystical
Silway, you need to
tradition.
tell me about this if you know things about it.
Yeah, that's a whole separate talk, but they
Yeah, not here.
yeah.
Yeah.
um but anyway, so to
Oh,
them the number
oh my
9
god,
was really
I just had a
important.
moment about Invictus, about numerology in their rituals. Anyways, continue.
Mhm. Silway says tell them about I'm getting to the island. Yeah. So they anyway, they're really obsessed with the number 9. Like they have all these like religious rituals and customs around the number 9, and like they have 9 virtues, and every like year that you're in the order, like you can like you're tested on, like you go on some quest that results in you proving that you have one of these virtues, and if you pass their test, you get like a ring that you then put on like a necklace, and kind of so you can see everybody all the paladins in the order, the actual initiated paladins, have a rank that you can see they're wearing their virtues like around their neck, and the leader of the order has all 9 rings. I think he was I think there were only 2 people that had gotten all 9. um, and also the way that they physically organized the team kind of told you about their hierarchy and their plot and their style. Like there was the camp space that we're designated as like a couple hundred square feet, with tents, but they had it organized into like the different like castes within the order had different like parts of the camp. So there's a part of the camp that is the out camp. It's where mercenaries and the people that we hire and the merchants that follow us around selling us stuff. And if you're playing a character concept that's not a paladin, you're probably staying there. And then there's an inner camp that's for the paladins and their families. And a lot of people came with their family. There were a lot of like, full families that were in the order, including little kids. And then there's like an inner sanctum that's like the holy place. And it has its own special tent. It's where the rituals take place.
This is all
It's
in the
where
setting. This
meals
is all in the
take.
setting of where the LARP, like the site or acreage of the
Right.
site.
Yeah,
Okay.
in these big festival games, like there's a huge field, and your faction, which might have 1,000 people in it, or all have that area, and within the faction there are smaller teams that have their own areas, kind of like roped off with
Right. Right.
fencing and stuff like that. And part at the beginning of the game, everybody sets up their area, so it, like each faction is its own like town, and the game will have 5 different factions. It's crazy. But anyway, so the yeah, and they have this cool inner sanctum that there's like like if you're not going in there for a meal, like you can't bring weapons in, you have to wash your hands before you go in. They're really like regarded as sacred. um and we had a lot of fun. It was a little weird though, because they kind of thought we wanted to be paladins, and we were like, we're just checking this festival thing out, but they were like really converting us, and they had just such style, like these paladins. They're all in white and heavily armored, all like matching, like the sun emblazoned on their chests and their shields. When we marched in two ranks, and they had like this song that I don't know what it was. It might have been in Hebrew. Nobody ever taught me the words, so I just kind of sung along with like the melody. But so you'd hear these paladins coming through this battlefield singing these like hymns, and then they would break into like rank and files. In combat, they were like really nasty, because they all had like tower shields and long swords, and they would all at the same time, when an order was called, tip the shield, do a downward slice, and then reset the shield, which is headshot city. So they also got like yellow cards and red cards like crazy, and got a lot of like a lot of people didn't like him because they thought
Yeah.
these guys play real hard,
Right, right. Someone's
But
asking in chat when you said festival larps before. Someone's like they're asking if that's similar to like the SEA.
I've never been
Oh,
to Pennsic. I don't know.
Yeah, I've
But
never been to
yeah,
the SEA either myself. But I think the commonality might be here that big field, lots of people, right, and everyone's got camps. I think is that much I know about the SEA, and like what is happening in those camps and why is I don't know. Continuing the story, because like so
Yeah.
you had this inner sanctum. What else?
Right. Anyway, so part of the religious teachings of these paladins is that the sun is watching over us, and we are its chosen, and we don't be afraid. We will not die as long as the sun is overhead. And I could go on about like my adventures with these paladins. It was super fun and really interesting. But I would later find that they went like off the deep end. And I would years later, like at a German festival LARP, ask people like, "Have you heard? I don't see the Ordo Solis. Are they still a thing? Are they still around?" And people said, "Oh yeah. So you remember how they said they couldn't die as long as the sun was overhead? Well, that's also how they played." And they would like their people on the team are just getting like eventually killed and just kind of not responding to it because the sun is saving me. And
You just got away with it. That's
and
awesome.
they just cheated. They just cheated their asses off until
was
eventually
it really
they were
considered
asked,
cheating out there? Was it really considered cheating, or
well, they're not playing by the game rules, so
okay,
yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure
also,
if it was like, well, it might be neat, so maybe we let it slide, but no.
Well, I'll say at these immersive festival LARPs, the style is very much to just roll with it, and maybe people had the reaction of like,
kind of
oh wow, like these guys, like something
something
supernatural is happening, like the gods really are watching out for them. But like really, like that collaboration is always in the spirit of like fair play. Like you can't like if you improvise that you're invincible, everyone thinks that's super lame. If you improvise that you're a vampire and there's no rules for what a vampire is, but you behave like a vampire, and when people throw garlic on you, you hiss or whatever. As long as you respond like a vampire, people are like, fine, you're a vampire. It doesn't matter what the rules are. Like the important thing is you're putting that out there, and I'm responding to it if it's real. But if you're if you're just trying to strongman your way through it, you can't kill me. The sun is up. Super lame. So anyway, they get dumped out of the festivals because they're not playing in a way people want to play with them, and so consequently they've got this team of like 70 people that have nowhere to go, and they've already have this tradition of there's this island off the coast of Sicily that they do these week-long LARP camping trips where they canoe out there with like backpacks and set up tents, and they're role-playing what is an order of paladins when they're not at war. What's an average week like for holy warriors and their families, and aides and cadets and stuff like that, which to me at the time, like hearing that's like, oh, you run LARPs with no plot, like that's weird.
Yeah.
But it's also just grilling with your friends.
Well,
but they really want they upped the amount that they were doing that, and they eventually decided to pool their money and buy an island somewhere off the east coast of Canada, and they moved there. and so that they could live as their characters.
Is
And
that
they were
real?
never heard from again.
Is that real?
That's real.
Your charming face
That's
is
what I've
disarming
heard.
my
That's what I've
disarming my
heard, I
truth.
should say. I haven't talked to any of them since 2006 or
that was a
something.
LARP hook right there. So I heard.
I hear that if you canoe around off the coast of Canada, you will find real paladins
can
who are
rely on
living
that.
a lie.
You can rely on that hook face all day, and you will get people in and out of whatever you're doing. Okay. I'm already like, where's the mod? Where am I going? I'm not streaming. No.
You know what though? One of the, I wanna, while I'm on the note of that, like one of the kind of formative LARP experiences for me was the leader of this team telling us kind of his theory of running teams was that the team is the LARP. You know, the team, like, and the LARP that you attend is just the setting that you're playing your LARP in. You know, and what he said was like, you know, I played Dungeons and Dragons for years and years and years, and I got sick of the fact that one guy at the table thinks he's the storyteller, and if we're not dancing for his story, it's like we're the ones obstructing it, you know, but we're the characters in it,
right?
You know, like
what the hell are you even doing without the characters, you know?
Yeah. So he's like, he wanted to kind of start a movement of like LARPs without organizers, like anarchist LARPs that are just players doing their own thing and figuring out how to like have fun with each other, and like like down with organizations that run LARPs. It's like, wow, pretty bold.
Yeah. But bold
interesting.
Move,
it sounds like,
right?
It sounds like someone that's gotten banned from a lot of LARPs to me, but also though, like it really taught me how to take ownership of the space and how to regard just like having fun with my friends as the LARP in a way that like makes it so that even if you missed all the mod hooks, you know, even if it rains and nobody leaves their cabin, you still have a good time because you know you have stuff that you can accomplish that isn't dependent on the schedule.
I got two stories about cabins and a team moment, right? Like you said cabins, and now I'm just like, okay, here we go. So cabins, right? So in that moment, pouring rain, you don't want to go out and play. It's like mod hooks. You're just watching mod hooks like leave NPC camp, get soaked, go back. Like it's depressing night, right? So at some point in time, there was like I had a string of events one year. There was a string of events one year that it just rained and snowed and rained and snowed. That was it. And it was like April. It was like April and snow and like October snow. And of course, like typical March rain, and then like a crazy thunderstorm in the summer or something. It was like a 4-event-a-year thing. So at some point we got so stir crazy that we just started buying things for the cabin and just and started decorating the cabin. And it got to the point where I walked in the cabin one day, and you know all the rain and all that's over and done with, and it's nice and sunny out, and I walk into our cabin after we've decked it out after all these like events and like rain, and we always got to add another thing. And I just didn't leave for like 6 hours. I just sat there and like we had like a whole like in-game like utensil ware or cooking ware, whatever stuff you want to call it. But really we had like a cauldron of like cider, you know, with cinnamon sticks in it, and like it was a crock pot, but it was a crock pot. But like we had like a in between like decanters, so it was like, oh, I'm just not like opening up a crock pot and just pouring. That did happen, don't get me wrong. But like when game was happening around us, like we had our ways to like make it look like it was part of like whatever barrel or crate was on top of or something. And that was tons of fun. That was a lot. And then there's the other times where you're just so sick at an event that really the most enjoyable thing at the event that can happen to you is like your team brings you oranges because you can't breathe or something. Like, and that's my epic. That's one of my best tales of LARPing. I went to a big weekend LARP for Nero. It was like 15 of us. We flew out, drove out. I got sick on the plane, and I was miserable the whole event because of it. And all I had needed, like, and this actually became like the highlight, one of the biggest moments. Like a lot of exciting things happened and like stories happened, whatever. But like really the day came down to this one moment, and I wake up in the middle of the night. I slept all day. The fever had broke, right? I was fucking charged, and I can say that because this is an 18+ stream. I was charged. I went all night and found out the next morning because like I was in such a sick state that at some point I was like, it was a 3-day event, and I was 4 or 5 days out because we were staying outside the event place first, then crashing at the event, staying afterwards, and then leaving. We had the whole week. So I was sick beforehand too, and we had been scrounging for oranges and bananas, trying to find them for days, and I was in a part of the campsite that was away from where those things are being freely given. It was like in like this big stone like fortress like thing in this campsite in Ohio, Cub World, I think. They had this huge stone garrison that I watched someone climb, full like sheer up, 20 feet up, climb and enter that way. By the way, that's against the rules, but it was the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then I come to find out that that area in the daytime doubled as like an NPC camp. And when I was starving for all these things, they were just like 80 feet away. And I find out at the end of the event, they're like, oh yeah, there was like oranges and bananas like over here the whole time you could have gotten. And like, I was so like energy deprived. I needed like, I was like, I need potassium, I need vitamin C, and I'm good, right? I was at that state of mind. I was just like, you know, the sickness had run its out. And you just kind of know that with your body.
Right.
Let me tell you, man. It was hilarious, and I always talk about that moment with my team. And I hadn't seen some of those people in years, and that was like in a lot of ways formative, because from there came a couple of staffs that I ended up working on a couple of events on. Another of which Silway was a part of. Mickey, Silway was a part of that, and I got sick at that event too, and had to role play as a character. So sickness is like, when Matt gets sick, cool things at LARPs happen. Wear a mask, please, okay? Because you don't want to get my sickness, right? But it was, I got sick, and I had this character called the Slither, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he was totally corrupted by the void, and he had this narrative where, like, there were some weird time things he was doing. He was doing some Doctor Who master stuff here, okay? All right? That was the story. I got sick, and I had to communicate with a bunch of players, and he's supposed to be like this, like, physically mutating in front of you kind of thing because of the corruption, and I suddenly had a raspy voice because of my sickness. Oh man, and I sold that role with my soul, because I went that whole role play talking in that voice, and the players didn't know I was sick. They knew immediately afterwards that I couldn't have faked that the whole time. But again, that moment of that huge event I went to where I got sick and all this happened, and then the wall climbing and witnessing all that and staying up all night afterwards, charged up, and like just like the game's let loose, you know, the huge, like the main plot of the game has gone off. It's festival time, like everyone's in their camps like singing songs and stuff, right, in the middle of the night. So that was, so I got to, like, in some ways people might characterize that as skipping the bad part of the day and just enjoying the good part of the night, because that's kind of how it was for a lot of people. Yeah. And that kind of showed in a lot of ways, because like everyone's like thriving to want to have this fun, and then they just kind of, this thing happened over here by this fortress in the middle of Ohio somewhere. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was awesome, and I don't think I would have ever gotten there without, like, yeah, let's be a team. you
right.
know, saying yes and doing something like that. There was a question, I think, Life of a Nerd asked, I might have missed, but what is your single biggest, most important piece of advice about being on a team? I got a good answer to this. I mean, I got two parts of it, and Dan, I want you to add to it if you can. Of course you can. Sure. I think the biggest piece is to be very patient with communication.
Yeah.
Everyone moves at different speeds, and we all want the same thing. I think that's an important piece of advice to give. But I think, I don't know if that's the single biggest, most important piece on being a team. I think wanting to be there and doing something collectively, cognitively wanting to do something collectively, not fire from the hip and hope for it. Don't get me wrong, that's fun right. too. But, you know, that, if you can achieve that, I think that that's, I think, the greatest experience you can have on a team, when you can get that kind of community going. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah. You know, similar to that, you know, my a friend of mine called it the long ride home. Like, every team, you get the long ride home. You're still going to be friends after the game. Yeah. And you might have a long ride home with them. So you can't do anything during the game that jeopardizes the long ride home, because if you end the game pissed at each other, it's going to be an even longer ride.
You know? Yeah. Yeah, that is the 100% truth. You know, and you bring up that, and that reminds me of the story I was just telling you before about the long ride home, because we drove. We rented out this like 11-person van and went, and we were inspired because some of our Canadian friends had done that, and they did it with remarkable. I mean, like remarkable, and some of our Texas friends down there too did as well. They had the party van, and I don't know if you ever was in that van when they specifically bought it. It's the Team Metal, I think they played. They specifically bought it for LARP travel because that's how into this they were. Like that was like this is what they did together in so many ways, and all of them had really crazy lives, like professionally, and the time was what time had. They had the time they had is what I mean to say. And you know that was like they imparted to me like that exact thing. The long ride home is like, so like they wanted like the best environment they could to be on that, because sometimes it isn't unavoidable. Someone may be bent out of something, you know? Yeah. So that was a luxury they got to have. But the long ride up and the long ride home, I mean, the long ride up, I talked about the 13th Warrior with my team for the first time because I had never seen the movie, right? And the long ride back, we talked about it again, you know? So those moments, you know, those are awesome. Right? Yeah. And so the long ride home, be cognizant of that. What?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I mean, in any group that you're a part of, just like try to remember you're not the center of it. You know, like especially if you're like the leader of the group, like your job isn't necessarily to be if you're leading a LARP group, like please don't think of yourself as the main character of the group, you know, or like the person whose face is on the novel, you know, like you're ideally like a team leader is like the best supporter, you know, on the team. And like your job is to put out the fires and distribute make sure everybody's having fun and everybody's playing with each other and like deal with a lot of like logistics and stuff like that. Like
sometimes create new things when there isn't anything, right?
Right. And you know, to that end, you know, like with that is like what I'd say, like towards like my advice for being on a team that has role playing within the team is like be conscious of what the team's like dynamic should be, and like try whenever possible to like lean into it, you know. Like I said, I was on a team that was like supposed to be like nobles that are sniping against each other. You know, if nobody does it during the weekend, then it's not actually a plot. So like, we need to be constantly trying to figure out each other's secrets and maneuver and stuff like that. And even if it doesn't amount to anything, it's, you know, lean on it. Or, you know, I had another LARP team at Madrigal where, you know, one of the characters' concepts was that he's the team treasurer and he's really rich and he's the one that's paying for our group to do all this, you know, research and travel. And he's the one who bought our clothes and armor and stuff like that. And, you know, it was really fun to lean into that of like, you know, like we need to take money out of the treasury and it's technically all of ours, but it's more fun to ask him for a loan, you know, and let him express that character concept. Yeah. You know,
I have a team member like that too at Invictus, same way. Like he wanted to play that let's make money. I was like, okay, well, like business ventures, just make stuff up. Okay. Like, right. You know, we're going to farm dirt. We're going to monetize dirt. Let's go. Yeah. That was a fun moment that happened. That's fun moments that happen when you're not trying to center yourself as being the centerpiece, right?
Right.
I love those. I love that kind of stuff. I think
we have over at Damarung, the Viking LARP I run. I'm the leader of a faction there, the Troll faction. All the people that play trolls and monsters I'm the king of them. I am the Troll King, and my character's a huge badass. But again, all I usually do is sit in a throne and delegate to people. And
did you design any of the costume or anything like that for that? Like any of the look? I know you've done it for other LARPs.
Yeah, I mean, I've designed my costume, but people come in with their own stuff.
I mean, like, but also like, hey, we should get all these masks to wear because they're all the same quality and like uniforming it. Like, I remember, was it? Well, Arcane? No, I mean, made it have like that crazy cool mask.
You know? Right. Yeah, I mean, at Damarung though, like we really want to like give people a lot of creative freedom. So no, we don't try to like enforce any like specific look. Though we do have like costume guidelines, and you know, you choose which type of troll you are. You know, there's forest trolls and mountain trolls and giants, and you know, there's different costuming guidelines for each. But
someone asked earlier because they want to know if like is there if either of us or you are a fan of like colors or uniforms, and I have opinions about colors and uniforms and the necessities for them, but also the necessities for the diversities in them too. But that can get really heady in a second. What do you think?
Team uniforms?
Yeah.
Team uniforms are good.
Even faction uniforms for an NPC group too.
Yeah, you know, everybody wearing the same symbol. It depends on how much you want to feel like you are a group,
Right.
and what you're expressing through the uniform, like, is it like if you're a military order, there should be some military marking,
Hmm. Hmm.
I guess it really depends on your concept.
Oh yeah, certainly, yeah. I definitely think it would depend on the concept. Like, I mean, one thing that I wanted, so because people have all kinds of different kind of costume and design and crafting talents that just blow my mind. Given enough time and resources and myself crying myself to sleep at night, I can draw something kind of okay sometimes to express like a piece of costuming, and uh, so a lot of time I was like super stressed out about, especially when I was like in this LARP, I was the lead role in the team. It was a noble court kind of thing, and it was all my colors and like that zeitgeist of whatever that court stood for in the game, and it was probably been Nero, yeah, Nero. And he, blue and black was really like something simple like that was made team colors and uniforms something I wanted to be like, yeah, you need to have something that's in that color scheme, even if it's not like we have the same exact gambazin in the same exact insignia in the same exact spot on my chess piece that is $800 that is everyone else has to have. I didn't want that kind of inflexibility at all. I wanted it to be way more open. So I think team colors and uniforms, when there's blue and black, meant something in the game world.
Right.
As far as like heraldry and noble courts and things.
Just to kind of expand on that point, though, like, I think the ultimate objective of a team uniform, other than to let people know that you're part of that group and make it easy to pick each other out in a battlefield and stuff like that, is really it's to make you feel like a group. Right?
Yeah.
Like wearing a uniform
Mental
makes you
game.
feel like a group. And there's a lot of other things that you can give your team that support that, like team traditions and team customs, and like even if it's I was on one team that like we got a bunch of like really shiny plates, and it was just like, when we have dinner, we eat on these plates, and it became something that we got like excited about, like, get the plates instead of
yeah. Oh, and if you didn't have the plates, it had its own little plot there. It's like, all right. Now what happens? What's your so there was actually so noble court teams is a huge thing. I have a lot of my team play comes in, and I'm not saying this is my experience thus far, and I'm super happy to have branched out from those kinds of things. But one of the coolest team concept, team like inner team things I ever saw, had to do with this old team in Nero. I think it was West March. I don't remember which iteration it might have been. If anyone knows that, you're gonna know the story I'm gonna tell. Someone led that team, and they part of becoming moving up in the noble structure had its own dictate, and like, you had to do these things and through these nobles and convince them and go on quests and do this stuff. For those of you who are not familiar with that kind of style of gameplay, though if you are, then you know exactly where I'm going with this. And it's what they had to do is like the night, that the evening or the morning before they didn't get knighted, they would get presented with the papers. They wouldn't get knighted until they did a whole 24-hour vigil. So they stayed up. So everyone in the camp's gone to sleep, and this one guy is up. And then there's like the dedicated few with them, and that's their own LARP right there. Okay.
Right.
And that's when I first got woke to that concept of how you can make that seem so important. And this is probably like, I'm only like I'm talking maybe 2015. So not that long ago. And I was really green. I'm still considering myself green in a lot of ways, but I had no idea about anything. Not like I didn't have the kind of exposure. Like all my peers around me had like 20 plus years of experience. And 24-hour vigil, and they were up that whole night, and then they had a specific spur that they would put on their boots as well.
Oh, nice.
So there might have had to be some costume logistics there where it's like, okay, you need to find the boot to fit the spur on, and like that's a conversation you have ahead of time. So this person had to know that they were going to accomplish these things, right? There are many ways that got done in that game I played. I think it would be Nero. Yeah, it's Nero. But I think that concept doesn't even stay there though. Like in other LARPs, I've kind of seen like other noble-esque structures want to kind of have those kinds of really cool things. And that really got me. That really got me into what was going on with that.
I always thought one of the strongest things about noble court roleplay and just noble roleplay at games is that it kind of implies this mentor-apprentice relationship. that like if you're a noble, like you're a part in Nero, at least you're a part of this like pyramidal hierarchy, and you've got people above you and you've got people below you and you've got people that are at your same level that are competing for a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives you all these relationships that you can play with over the weekends.
Yeah.
And also like some of them, like you're getting trained, to
Mm-hmm.
to
That was my
be a
first
knight
LARP
or
ever, so
whatever.
like I was learning LARPing through that, Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was definitely like figuring out like boffer LARP concept in general, like how to fight without
Mhm.
hurting someone. I was
Yeah.
learning all that. It was my grounds, my stomping grounds for a long time. So it's Life of a Nerd actually asked while we were chatting before, what suggestions do you have for people to go to a game without a team? So you have to. So I think.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say it's too broad. I think it's a good question, but my experience with that is, I very rarely go into something. I haven't gone into anything blind, personally. Except like I was, with my even when I first started LARPing, I had one other person with me, you know. Um, Suggestions to have for people who go to a game without a team. The games that I've played have been designed specifically for teams. I've never been to a game that was not designed without a team. So, what do you got, Dan?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to be general,
Like even a faction too. Like that's still a team, right? In a manner of speaking.
Like it really depends on the game and what you want. Like do you want to be on a team? Like
yeah. Okay. So if you're I'd say if you're seeking, if you're looking to be on a team, I would say be as kind as possible to people. I mean,
right.
And be as kind to yourself as possible. Be brave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people, you don't have to be brave to go engage with someone and talk to them. And I talked about this earlier too when I was saying that my first LARP experience, I didn't, like I said, one other person, and then they were gone after one event, and I'd suddenly been a part of this team, and I wanted that person to come
right.
back and be a part of all these cool tradition things we were doing, and but they didn't, and that was fine. But suggestions.
You know what I got?
Yeah.
If you're playing at a game with teams, and teams are a really big part of that game, like what sucks for you is that other players have a kind of built-in social structure around their play. Mm-hmm. So if you're not on a team, you usually have to do a little bit more legwork to make contacts and acquaintances and make sure that when something happens, somebody will pull you in.
I got a tail for that. Yeah.
And to that end, I think if a game is really team oriented, my best advice is to like make yourself a really big indispensable character. That if you have a really strong concept that is easy to include in things, then people will know, oh, we're going into an old dungeon, bring the archaeologist or whatever,
Yeah.
Like you need to give people kind of a hook to like remember you by, and being like a really memorable character is like kind of a hack.
Your catch line, your slogan, the thing you put on, the thing that's written in the words of your fancy colors or something. Yeah. I actually I experienced it was 2011 or so. I was only like 3 years into having ever first LARP, so not a lot for a lot of things. I only had been to like 10 events at this point. I met this person who was from SCA, mm-hmm. and so they had this festival feel about them already. What they did, they were Han Solo. I mean, they were totally a Han Solo at this LARP. I mean, they knew people at the game, but specifically were out, not their characters weren't connected, and they had conversed about that. That being mm-hmm. said, that was the first time that person knew that person was running a game. So they were going into this fresh anyways, completely fresh. And what mm-hmm. they did with their character was they made them not talk the whole weekend. And what that's to say is this player picked a big thing that I'm remembering 12 years later, that this one character I met this time, and the person who played it, they were actively, thinking about doing that. They were cognitively not responding and like expressing difficulty in speaking and writing things down and mm-hmm. actually using sign language at one point, that was hugely memorable. But they didn't. That wasn't. That's a deck. And some people might say that as that's how you have your fun being the Han Solo guy at the game. You just do this cool thing just for yourself, and that's partially true. But really, I've always found it really hard for people not to become like, whoa, who are you, and like want you to come play with them some more, mm-hmm. it's really hard not. I mean, it's hard for me to think. It's hard not to make connections at a LARP now. You know,
Yeah.
especially if you can
Well,
express something you're really into.
we're getting kind of towards the end, but I had one other like team story I want to tell, just to kind of give an example of something that I don't see happening a ton, but I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So my Drakenfest team, the Morning Star, we play. Like I said, there's probably like 60 people in this group, and we
Mm-hmm.
play like these crazy snake cultists. Um, and, and by the way, like that's really important that we say up front, our characters are snake cultists,
Yeah.
because we have a lot of people that want to play because their friends are on the team,
Yeah.
but they don't want to play as snake cultists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine, but like it kind of screws up our like group atmosphere if not
Yeah.
everybody's like buying into the
Yeah. No, I
concept,
totally get
so
that.
like we have a certain like kind of ratio of like people that we, all right, but like do you want to buy into this thing that we're doing, and we have to say that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And because it's such a big team, like we actually have like an application, like you have to fill out a form, and the team leaders will kind of like let you know if you're
pro gamers, pro LARPers over here filling out forms.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's important because we have also like a limited amount of space.
When you have that many people and you're active, when you have that many people and you're in an environment where it's regular to like openly want to be a part of a faction like that, I guess that's culturally something that I'm unfamiliar with. But I can see how that tracks.
But they also the people that run the team put a lot of work into trying to figure out like what's our plot, like what's our LARP that we're playing through over this 5-day festival. And they do a pretty good job of like setting it up at the beginning of the weekend before we start playing, them talking about here's what we want to do, here's the kind of story we want to tell, but like here, they're always designed in a way so that hopefully this is something that you can use in your internal story that you're telling, like last year, like 2 years ago at Drakenfest, they said like our group story is about this substance that we're getting prepared to take. It's this group ritual that we're going to do on this certain night of the LARP, like 3 days in. And basically like they explain like in order to get the most out of this, it's best if you kind of come to this LARP with your character like kind of like in a state of indecision, something that you're working on internally. And that during the 3-day lead up to this ritual, you figure out how to bring yourself into kind of a state of anxiety around this. Then we're going to do this big ritual. A lot of shit is going to happen. It'll both be, for your character, it'll both be amazing and terrible. And then we're going to react to each other after it, and that was really helpful, like knowing like there's this, all right, I'm going to pick something that like my character is like a little bit conflicted about, and I'm going to, over the course of a couple days, work myself up. And then we do this ritual where we drink this blood, and we take this like weird substance. And we've been told like when you hear the first bell ring, like your character will have this state of complete panic and terror, like you're in hell.
Yeah.
And it lasts until we ring the second bell, and then you're like in this ecstatic state of like resolution, and everything makes sense, and you see beyond the physical, you get. And they gave us kind of like some ideas about how to role play that, or or just kind of particles to build on, but then what I found, without knowing what was going to happen to my character at the end of it, it took me through this like whole psychological process of like, all right, now I'm in the state of extreme anxiety around my character's like kind of inner conflict. And going through this thing as a team, like it almost like advanced my personal story. Like it gave me an excuse to make a permanent decision about my character, that because we did it as a group, everybody was really receptive to each other. And like the role play afterwards was just really like again, like it was like the rest of the LARP just became like dark, and it was just our team like going through some shit together, and it was really emotional and intense, and for everybody's experience was unique, so anyway, and then the following year, just I'll try to make this quick, it was like yeah, they wanted to do a little bit more like fantasy plot, where when we go into the bad place during our ritual, like basically these like 4 or 5 demons like saw us while we were there, and they said these demons at the end of the previous event, they revealed like something followed us out of the void, and it's like haunting like certain people, and they kind of gave people little like cards to like with some, how to role play that, like um, but so our team plot the following year was like these like basically these like demon wraiths are trying to kill the 5 leaders of our team, but the 5 leaders of our team are like, because of this magical effect, can't see the wraiths or interact with them, or anything that the wraiths give us they can't see. Uh-huh. We had an understanding on the team that within the Mythodia rules, if you're wearing, I think, like a blue headband, there's some like signal that means I'm invisible, you know. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, sorry, that's a whole separate discussion. But anyway, there is a signal in the game that basically means like this person is here in spirit form, but you can't like really interact with them. So
Right.
they
Yeah.
use that symbol like just to indicate the wraiths, but like really it was like I don't think like I could even see the symbol on the wraith costume. Basically what happened was on each night of the LARP, one of the team leaders would kind of like sneak away and go put on his like wraith costume and come back to the team and run this horrifying scene where he'd kind of worked out in advance with somebody like how to react when he appears, and she would scream and set the tone and describe something in character. I feel it burning me, and people then kind of like react to that. And each one of the wraiths left us like a puzzle, like a traditional LARP puzzle where we had to figure out what, we needed some item that was related to each character, but we couldn't ask them for help. Right. We had to kind of figure it out without that character. And basically each of our 5 team leaders kind of like ran a plot in which if the people on the team don't figure this, I'm going to kill my character off. And they all brought like extra costumes in case their character dies during this, and luckily we did solve all the puzzles and we ended up saving their characters, but they're really on the line, and it's like that like kind of idea, like I'm going to go play a wraith to go haunt my friends and give them a puzzle, and if they solve it they win, like that's a very standard LARP plot, you know? But in this case it's run by players for other players, and the game officially is like, great, that's encouraged, and we're not gonna, you don't have to show up at NPC camp and get a stat card or something like that. It's like it's very self-contained, so if you want to NPC for each other, go for it. It doesn't matter, like
there's been other games where like someone like a friend of mine, he played like this character that could summon creatures, but like one of the key rules if you wanted to do something really like apropos with it was, you had to have someone who wasn't like not, someone who just was going to agree to be that thing that wasn't provided by whatever the game organization. So no NPC for you basically is what it came down to.
Right.
But there are people who are like, hey, yeah, I'm 20 minutes away. I'll come up for 4 hours and be that thing. And like 3 or 4 times that thing happened. Right. And that's backfired in a lot of game systems, and I wouldn't want to get into that, but like, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole about, just strangers walking up and like people going on free range plot. There's a lot of fun with that that can be had. And I've also seen the abuse, right? But in an environment where like it's, the rules say it's abuse. But anyways, and so they got decked out and like all the creatures things, and then like later that evening they, the summoning thing happened, and then they're coming out, and now the team is fighting like these 2 guys, and the person who's doing that didn't tell them about that at all for the whole weekend. It's like a surprise, so they have no idea that they think it's part of the game world or whatever like that, and that was excellent.
Right.
And I wanted to talk about that because of plot, teams making making rogue plot or like plot that is like on your team, stuff that inter-team story like that, and bringing that up brings up something we mentioned a little bit earlier about traditions, and so with traditions that there's the colors of traditions, you can like as Life of a Nerd mentioned earlier in chat, like trying to tie in everything together tonight because we do have to wrap at this point. To tie everything together, like there's a lot of experience that have happened, and a lot of rogue plot that happened that just leads to better things happening, in and around you and yourself, right?
Yeah.
And it leads to great stories to be able to tell people. I think there's been a couple of other things too, like, that maybe we haven't touched on yet tonight, that we can maybe come back to another night, when it comes to team stuff. And I'm really curious if before, we got maybe 5 more minutes. I would love to answer a few more questions in chat if you can spare that 5 minutes, Dan,
Oh
about
yeah.
team stuff and things like that. Largely, and I want to see if we can get any answers from there. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about. Let's see here. How'd it go? As a troop. So I think it's important to distinguish to outline managing expectations, right? So that ties into communication as well. And so when you're going into a game, you had, with the serpent cult thing you described before, you had people like knew that for it to be the fun that you guys wanted to have, you had to have that kind of stuff.
Right.
How do you think you can set up like a barrier of entry like that for somebody that's soft and doesn't feel harsh? Not saying that anything that we've said is harsh, but what's a good guideline to go on, you think, to invite someone into that
What
play?
do you mean, just for
Like, it sounds like being direct's the
trying to get
best
people to
method.
buy into a
Yeah, like, how do you generate excitement
Yeah.
about the buy-in? Like, if someone doesn't know, like, do you show them, like, do they have to be knowledgeable already of the rules? Is it something you can blindly
Right.
walk into a workshop about?
Well, one really good thing is to like make characters together. Like you don't just figure out who you are, you figure out who you are within the context of this group of people.
Yeah.
Like so what's my character, and then like the game, like am I a fighter or a wizard or whatever, but then also like what's my role socially within the team, and like that's something that is really, a lot of that is really best discussed before the game in a way that you can kind of like plan out what's fun.
Right. So when you say rogue plot or something like that, it's
yeah,
not really rogue.
and
It's just
having that. Sorry, but I was gonna say having that like kind of like discussion about it as a group out of game beforehand also allows you to kind of steer people if their concepts are going like kind of like outside the vision or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, what else? We had. So let's bring this up together. So what? I mean, I don't. You got what LARPs you going for in the fall? At this point, if we can start looking forward to has anything in the fall been canceled for you yet that you?
Oh well, I'll definitely be at Goat LARP 2. No, I don't. Well, that's in July. If I don't cancel it, I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
In June, I'll determine whether or not we're canceling Goat LARP 2 or just kicking it down the road.
Yeah, I think 1 month at a time, right?
And then Village of Idiots in October.
Yeah.
A game where you get to roleplay being a complete moron in a village full of morons.
Nice.
It's going to be a unique LARP experience. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Damarung and Malleus are the two other games that I'm playing. I'm running Damarung and playing at Malleus, but who knows when they'll run again.
Right. I'm just excited. I'm just excited that like we talked about so many cool team stuff. Like it just jives me up to like think about like ways to like the little tiny ways to have fun and
another crazy LARP festival team concept.
What?
I thought this was wild, right? So I heard about this secondhand that like maybe like 5-6 years ago at Drakenfest, this group showed up and it was like this group of somewhere between like 50 and 70 Russians. And by the way, only like 2 of them speak like German or English,
okay.
Which is kind of needed to get by at that game. And they're role playing the entire group of people that lives in a castle, like the nobles, the knights, the attendants, the servants, the whatever. They're like this whole castle. And the reason that they're here is because they're the princess, who's about to take the throne. This curse has affected her. She lost her memory and she vanished. And we know she's here somewhere. Meanwhile, the person who's playing the queen princess, she pretends like she just like signs up to the Drakenfest forums as if she's like basically like she found another like team that she could just join and say, I'm playing a character that has lost her memory. Can I play with you guys?
Access. I mean, that's so remarkable. Just how easy access that all sounds. That's cool.
Right. Yeah. But so she signs up with a whole group of complete strangers. And meanwhile, her castle is walking around this. I mean, it's an event with thousands and thousands of people at it. So like, it's not like you necessarily just find the person you're looking for. Like finding somebody at one of these festivals is a big long puzzle, and they don't speak the language either, so like they've only got like like drawings of her face, and they're showing it to people and whatever. And ultimately, like 3 or 4 days deep in the LARP, they finally recognize her, and they and they have this big like it's her, and they do, they do the ritual which restores her memory, and when she remembers who she is, she's like, the team that's been like looking after her this whole week, she's like, thank you so much, you guys were great hosts, you ended, in truth, you treated me really well, so in thanks, you have the service of my entire castle. And all these the whole like group of like knights and nobles and everything are like, they take a knee and they're like, we serve you for the rest of the event, do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's ad hoc. That all happened. Yeah.
Right.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, required no NPCs. Just people playing with other people.
Nice. And that's really all it is, right? Like at the end of the day, like all the team talk and everything, it's really just people playing with other people and figuring out what you all like to do, and expressing and finding ways to express that as best you can. And it's okay not. And I think people stress out about the expressing part a lot because it can seem super intimidating, but it's just one step at a time, even if it's just so much as showing a drawing or like, I remember this one scene from that movie I liked and I want to experience that at the LARP. You can always just lead with something that simple. Don't chain yourself down and keep yourself open to experiences. And I think that really sums up, teams in a whole is really be open to new experiences. And, there are good ways and bad ways to do things, and there are things that people find annoying or people might not. And there's risks you can take and risks you can't take.
Yeah.
And it's pretty open-ended.
A good team is powerful. It keeps people coming back. You develop bonds.
Sometimes
with your
people,
that last longer than the LARP.
Absolutely.
People who I was on House Eastwick with, shout out Mickey.
House Eastwick. That's a team tradition right there. Was always wearing the symbol. We had our words, sovereign good. I'm never gonna forget that. Okay, and that.
My favorite team tradition on that team is the annual cursing out of journalists who have written trash about us.
Oh, the Ravens.
And every year we would go down to the Ravens Herald office, and like Mickey would yell at some NPC.
Oh, and then there's the
we threatened to burn the building down and leave.
Yeah. I knew someone that did a painting of like, there's a painting of like a huge like, there's an enemy called Orban. I know Subway knows all about this, but there's a painting of like that whole group of players that did that. That was, no one could have planned for that. That was something that someone brought up and was like, I'm gonna do this. So like, one of my favorite musicals is Shrek, and one of the songs is "Wave Your Freak Flag High." So I mean, like when it comes to like, hey, I can paint and like make it a team activity, totally wave that flag, okay? Like you should feel encouraged to do that, especially at, any of the games you find me at. I'm sure any of the games you find Dan at, you're gonna find people that want to just get right into it with you. Like they want you to get into it as fast as possible. And I think if you seek those people out too at games, especially if you're new and find that energy, I think you're gonna end up right where you want to be, definitely. And as a last parting gift, Dan, I'd say for everybody, well, I wouldn't say a gift, but I'd say we had some other things that we may want to talk about again in the future that I was thinking about here too. Do we happen to have that topic stuff that maybe we can like put out to people in chat or maybe in the group somewhere if they want to hear another talk about something like that? If you don't have that list handy, that's fine, but we can do something like that for
Facebook. I don't have the list handy, but yeah, we should put it out there for people that want to.
Was there a topic that you maybe just
want to hear us chat about stuff? Because in case you haven't heard, if this went well, feels pretty cool. Maybe Matt and I will do this as a regular LARP shop Twitch show.
I think a lot, I really just want to share experiences as much as possible, right? And if people want to hear those experiences and relate them to themselves and be inspired to have their own experiences, man, I don't want to not do that. Okay, so if you want to have that, I want you to let me know and let us all know. And I think there are people here that want to also do the same thing with their experiences that aren't us. So if you guys are looking for content that's more centralized in that too, feel free to express that and know that there are a lot of people out there right now that are trying to bring that to you too. Would you say, Dan?
No, we hate telling people things.
Say that again.
We hate telling people things.
Oh,
this was a drag, and please don't ask for more.
Right? No, just
don't follow us and don't subscribe.
You know what? Eviscerate us on Facebook. All right, this has been a lot of fun, man. I'm glad we got an opportunity to do this.
Yeah,
Even if just once, I think there's a lot. I mean, I love the conscious experience. That's really cool. That's really excellent.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun, Matt.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks
so guys,
for watching, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. Have a good one. And hopefully we'll get back to you soon with some more stuff coming up. Next week there's going to be more content coming up. Pay attention to the Coventry groups and the Invictus 2 groups. They have there is interview things coming up next week that you might want to be privy to. And also, if you're part of the stories and the games that you play, Coventry and Invictus and Fealty, keep an eye on their Facebook groups because they are dropping community story and stuff that everyone is participating in, and if you want to get a dip in on that and see where it's at, drop in on there. In a more advanced world, I drop those links right now, but I don't have them. But you can find them. Look us up on Facebook. We all have the pages, and many of you here already know that. So thanks for spending part of your Thursday evening with us. Thanks, Dan, for spending your time with me and doing this with me and jarring out on this, and have a great night.